Okay, so ready?
Yes,
All
so
right.
ready.
Welcome, Nicole. Where you're located? You're in New Hampshire, New Jersey? You're close.
I am in New Hampshire, yes.
All right.
I was in New York City for 10 years until this past June. So
Okay.
I'm in Exeter, New Hampshire.
Well, you got out at the right time. And you are a triathlete. You are a multitasker, obviously. So tell us about yourself.
Sure. So I am a professional triathlete. And I also work full-time as a digital project manager at Citibank. So definitely quite busy with working remotely full-time as well as triathlon.
How do you what was your first passion?
My first endurance sport, which I was passionate about because I did it for so long, is swimming.
Oh.
When I was 8 years old. And I guess to get to the point of triathlon, I was a swimmer and then I was a runner in high school. There was a brief time where I was playing softball. Technically, baseball was my first sport, my first organized sport. Funny enough, playing with the boys, which is on Little League, because my town did not have a girls league yet, or a girls softball league, until a little bit later. So yeah, to take it from the beginning, I played Little League. First endurance sport was swimming. And then I picked up running when I was 14 in high school. Then I became I ran in college. I ran Division I at Bucknell University. And I wanted to keep running. So I kept running after graduating for about 2 years, exclusively running, before I picked up triathlon.
What were you running in school? Well, one, what did you swim? And two, what did you run?
I swam. Funny enough, the distance events weren't my best. I think that the 200 free was the best thing I did in high school, and growing up, I was a good backstroker for a time. And then what was the other question about?
What'd you run?
Oh, what I run? Oh my gosh, I ran cross country, indoor track and field, and outdoor track and field. But my love is cross country.
Okay, nice, nice. And then so you are a professional athlete, and you have this professional athlete title, but that doesn't mean you do it full time. And I know I'm briefly mentioned this before, but so I know a lot of like CrossFit professional athletes and other sports. I'm not so familiar with triathletes and how it works with being a professional, because you make money by winning or finding that spot, but you also make money from your sponsors. You don't like how do you juggle it, and why, like, there's not a huge amount of, I guess, money into it. You're doing it for your love of it, or because I think that it's gotten big with like Spartans and all that, and I know it's different, but I feel like it's become a little more mainstream.
Yeah, it's very similar in the sense that you are your own sole proprietor, and you're responsible for getting whatever sponsorships you can get. That's how it's like similar to CrossFit or running, actually. So by having my, I guess, professional license or elite license, it means I at least have the option of entering races that pay a pro prize purse. So it's more of I have the access for the potential to win money back. So with that, the triathlon's in a bit of a recession, or a bit of a recession or a plateau, depending how you want to look at it. So the prize purses aren't there like they used to be, and the support from brands is more. And I'm sure this is across all sporting industries, but they're using it more for amateur who have a large following versus a professional who's at like the top tier of their sport. So yeah, so while I have access to the prize purses, but then it's up to me if I want to get sponsorship from brands. So with that, I have, obviously I didn't win any money last year in 2020. Won a little bit my first 2 years, which my first year as a professional was 2018 and then 2019. Don't think it's, if you actually add up the dollars of, or sorry, if you add up the dollars I've won compared to the length of which I train, it like it's like pennies per hour. But I love it, and I'm super passionate about it, and I'm so fortunate to have, I do have a couple of sponsors, but I'm so fortunate to have the ability to have like a full-time job and feel grounded and not worried about where my next paycheck is coming from. And that actually, I think, allows me to perform better because I don't have the pressure of having to win race money.
Totally. And I mean, a weird year, that it was just kind of thrown our way like this. Like, how could anyone do anything or win any money because there weren't any races? So it's like to then be dependent on nothing is like, okay, so it is absolutely, I mean, the reality is that some people have that mindset of, there's only option A, where clearly you figured it out another way, which is great. How do you juggle it? What's your schedule look like when you're in, and I guess you're constantly training, or you have some sort of, I know you have a coach and you have a program. I'm assuming that he or she puts together for you, and then, you taper or you don't, or how does that whole thing work?
Yeah, I have a coach who provides me with workouts I do, so my weekend or my weekday scheduled about to include about 3 to 4 swims a week, 3 to 4 bike rides a week, and 3 to 4, usually 3 runs a week. So add it up, and I'm clearly doubling up a lot of most days, about 5 days a week. Weekday mornings are typically, I'm a night owl, so I don't like to wake up early. I feel like I'm not like most triathletes in that sense, but usually I'll do a morning session, whether it's swim, bike, or run, around, try to get out the door by 8:30. And I know that sounds like so late and like luxurious.
But you probably go to bed late.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in bed. I try to like turn out the lights by midnight. So, so yeah. And then I try to get back by like in the morning, try to get back by around 9:30. And usually, admittedly, I'm jumping right on a call in my running gear still, like having just eaten like a bar, and but I definitely like take it to last minute. But I do maximize the time when I'm out there. So the hour run, or hour swim, or usually hour 15 to an hour and a half bike.
And so during training season, that's what your schedule looks like. What does your off season training look like? Or you don't really train, or you do anything else? Because I feel like, and I'm getting, because I was in fitness, so like training people for, I don't know, like the last 10 years almost. And I would get like marathoners. I had a few triathletes that I would train. And I would always try to incorporate weight training for them. And there was always some sort of resistance back. And I think that when they really saw that it actually helped, then they're like, oh, thanks. But I think that normally, people that do it are so skeptical. And I understand that because, you want to practice what you're doing to get better at it. But it's like you sometimes need that supplementation to boost you that extra bit.
So for me, I was that endurance junkie, resistant to strength training, and I finally started to strength train when I joined my current coach now a year and 3 months ago. Okay. And the reason I was resistant is because I wanted a coach who was going to program my strength in with my endurance.
Got it.
I couldn't it was hard for, like, I wanted my coach to, because I didn't know, I was like, there's people who say you should strength train on the hard days because it like make them really hard. But then there's folks who think that it's, strength train on like the medium days because you're not like super tired. And then there's the folks who say strength train on your easy days. And I was like, I just, I don't want to like just throw it in willy nilly. And like, I want it to work with, I want it to like, to ramp
Complement
up
what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so finally with I actually have my coach works closely with my strength coach. So I have a separate strength coach who provides me with the exact movements through an app. And he has like videos for each movement. And he coordinates with I guess we call it my main coach to make sure that it's working with, hard bike day in the evening, strength train. On Wednesday, I have a easy swim and a hard swim and a medium run. Therefore, let's focus on mobility that day.
Yeah.
Weekend. So it's not just strength that he provides me, but it's mobility, it's strength, and like soft tissue reset days. So some days like I open the app and it's like foam roll this and, do this like mobility, thoracic spine exercises.
Nice. And you've seen a change, or it hasn't been long enough to really see anything yet?
I have seen a change in my more explosive power.
Okay.
I was used to be the kind of athlete who could like, ride at this wattage all day. But the second you wanted me to go above, it was like really tough. So I've noticed that, and also just injury. I haven't, knock on wood, been injured in a really long time.
Yeah. I think that it's one of those things where I totally get it, and I would always go back and forth with people that I would train. Like they'd say, yeah, but I need to get better at running, so I need to run more. And I'm like, but no, you need to squat and you need a deadlift, because those are things that will strengthen everything that you're doing, and it will just make it all better, I promise. And it's funny because I'm not like, I like to weight train, I like to cross train, but I'm not into particularly long things. And at one point, I think it was last year, it was in the last couple of years, I was only weight training, and my husband's business partner was like, hey, do you want to run a marathon with me? And I was like, I'm not. And it was a half and a full together. I was like, I'll do the half with you. Like, I'll do the first half. And I ended up, and I didn't run. I didn't run once. I was only strength training. And I ended up completing it at 141, which apparently is good. And
oh my goodness.
It was so funny because I was like, yeah, I mean, like, and I finished and I was like, dude, like, I felt so good. And that's always like my testament to strength training is so important, because I didn't run. Like, I like running. Like, I'm not anti-run. I now run, here and there, but I think that it's so important. And I'd say this story I used to say it to my clients, and they'd say, really? And I'd like, have to pull out my athlinks and show them like the little thing. And I'm like, I swear, like, strength training works.
Yeah. They're like, you didn't miss a timing mat somewhere?
I know, crazy. Well, what happened was, I don't know how to pace myself, obviously, because I don't know what I'm doing. But I got behind this chick who I actually think ended up taking first. And the first, I think it was like 5 miles or something. We ran 6 minutes per, like 6:50s or something for the first few miles, because I was able to stay with her. And then I lost her, not because I couldn't keep up, but because we hit a pack of people, and I literally I lost her, and I didn't know how to. So then you play that game where you try to keep up with that person and this person, and I just kept trying to find her, and I just couldn't find her. So I couldn't figure out where I was with how fast I was running or slow I was running. But I do think that it's, you gotta, if you can find someone to pace you, that's like a huge cheat. Like, super helpful.
And like with the strength training, like you have to be able to move well. there's so much, like, and especially my races where I'm on the bike for 2.5 hours and then I run a half marathon after. Like, I have to have like a functional body in order to achieve that. And like,
Totally.
no amount of endurance is going to make me move really well.
Totally.
It's just gonna make me be able to move for a really long time.
Yeah. And the other thing that, I mean, obviously you have your own coach, but something else that might help you is if you, I don't know if you do train with a weight vest, but it will help you because when you make that transition, right, you're lagging. So essentially, when you're already exhausted, if you start training with a weight vest, because you're small, like, I don't know how big you are, but you, I don't know, in the 120s or maybe even smaller.
Yeah, right
right around there. But it will actually help you a lot with your strength. And it eventually it will feel like, I don't want to say it will feel like nothing, but with that transition, it will help a lot from your, I don't know the order of, I guess your swimming, biking, or biking, swimming, biking, running, swimming.
Swim, bike, run.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it will help with those transitions. Something to think about. How, I feel like I have so many questions for you now. So you juggle it all basically. How do you go about finding your coach?
That was tough. Yeah, there's no like directory for triathlon coaches,
which is weird. You would think there would be, no?
Yeah, I'm there's a couple different certifications, but those certifications don't hold like a roster that's accessible. And so I had trained with a coach in New York, and that I was Coach Kane of City Coach, and he's the one who got me from complete amateur, and I was a good runner, but I hadn't ridden a bike for performance ever in my life. So, and I had the swimming background, but he helped me by literally going out on River Road, which is across right into New Jersey, right by the George Washington Bridge. Mm-hmm. And he rode with me and basically held my hand and helped me under, just like, I didn't know you didn't coast down the hill. Like, I didn't realize you kept pedaling down a hill. Oh. Like, that was just like a novelty to me.
I guess, does it depend how steep the hill is, or always you try to pedal?
It depends, of course. Like, yeah, if the hill's super steep, I still there's braking that happens, but not as frequently. You got to be pretty fearless, but and you just have to learn how to control a bike better and understand how that speed can carry you down the hill, around a curve, or through a turn. So I definitely credit him to getting me to like learn how to ride a bike fast.
And fearlessly.
I'm sorry?
And fearlessly.
Yes. And I actually trained with his wife a lot, who was a phenomenal athlete. So then and then I guess turned professional, and I wanted to have teammates who were going to lift me up, because anytime I've been in a situation, and this happened in college as well, where I'm not nearly the fastest, when I surround myself with people who are really good, a rising tide lifts all boats. So, so I wanted to find a training group. Granted, they are mostly based in Boulder, but we have typically have more training camps. So far, there's only been one, but knowing that I have access to teammates who are phenomenal athletes as well, and having those 2-week training camps is really helpful. And I look forward to having one again. So I found my coach by discussing with other professional triathletes who have been around. And I was like, what coaches have you had? And how did you find them? What should I look for in a coach? What are the obvious questions? What are the not so obvious? And I had lengthy discussions with 3 coaches who have other successful professional triathletes. And I also really wanted a woman. And there was no reason, like I loved Coach Kane. He was fantastic. But I also just wanted, I wanted a female mentorship, and that was really important to me. So I found Julie Dibbins, who was also won several half Ironmans, and she's still badass on the bike. I can't keep up with her at camp. um, and so I found Julie, and we had an hour call, and I had hour calls with three coaches, and I just really gelled with her. And so
it's important.
Yeah.
Are there particular is it big in the US? Are there region, like pockets in the US where it's like, just because I've also heard like in Colorado it's a thing, but there's like serious races out there. It's famous for it basically. I feel like, but is it a thing in like abroad, or is it mostly a US thing, or?
Yeah, it's both. I'd say so I do a lot of Ironman branded races. It's really confusing. There's Ironman the company, but then Ironman the distance. So Ironman branded races are pretty much 50% North America, 50% Europe and Asia.
Wow.
There's also Challenge is another brand of racing that has a couple in South America, otherwise all Europe. Europe and Australia, and New Zealand. So I had plans to do 2 international races last year, and I did 2 international races the year before that. One in Ireland, and if you count, one in Canada. So it's a fun reason to travel. Bringing your bike on a plane is like, it's kind of a pain, but it's such a great excuse to go to a place you may not have considered and see a different part of the world in like a very different way, and really integrate yourself with that experience. Whereas you're not like doing the touristy things, maybe do the touristy things after, but see, like, really be integrated with other people racing.
Yeah, it's awesome. How do you, I'd imagine taking your bike on an airplane is like trying to take your bike on the subway, right? Like it's super uncomfortable. Everyone's staring at you. It's like super awkward to schlep it in, schlep it out. Like I can't imagine.
Yeah. It's exactly like you have like a special case for the bike, but you're like dragging it around the airport, and then you bring it to like the oversized luggage, and you just like cross your fingers that they take good care of it.
Yeah. How much does your bike weigh?
It's about 18 or 19 pounds. Actually, it's behind me.
Yeah, I see it. It's so cute.
Yeah. So
it's very cute.
It's actually heavier than my road bike. And that's the reason for that is just the aerodynamics. Even though they weigh like about 1 to 2 pounds more compared to my road bike, it's worth it in the aerodynamic savings.
Huh. Very interesting. I don't know much about bikes, but I think she's very pretty. Do you have a name for her or him?
I don't. I should. I have a name for my other bikes.
How many do you have?
I have one road bike, one mountain, and my old tri bike, and this bike that I got in April last year. So talk about timing. I got to race her just once.
Once. Okay.
So,
something.
Yeah, a small distance time trial setup race this past summer.
Nice. And how does a time trial work? Yeah.
So the race I did was a time trial format. It was a triathlon, but they had starters every 8 to 10 seconds. So at any point in the race, you could be beating someone who's ahead of you, and someone behind you could be beating you, and you don't even realize. But they did start the races based on your expected finish time, so you had a rough idea where you were in the field. So that's typically the races with, because I race in the professional division, I start out with 10 to 20 other women in a mass start with a swim. And so you always know where you're at with that.
So it's always 10 to 20 other women?
That's usually how many show up on race day. I think the limit's like 30.
Huh.
So because I started with all the other professional women, and there aren't that many.
Are there age groups, weight groups?
Age groups start after the pros.
Got it. So if you're a pro, it doesn't matter how old you are. You're a pro, that's it.
Yep.
Wow, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool.
It is. It's pretty cool because it's like it doesn't like there's no factors. You are, you're not.
Yeah, and you're like you're in the race, and because you all start at the same time, you actually know where you fit in.
Right.
Whereas when you start out triathlon, they usually go off in age groups, or sometimes you have like men 35 to 39 plus women 45 to 49, and and maybe 3 other age group divisions all start together. But then there's in one wave, and then there's sometimes 2 waves up to 20 waves for like a national competition. So when you're doing those, you actually don't know where you're at, except that you have to put your age on your calf in the form of a Sharpie or a tattoo. And so you're like, when you're racing, you're like looking at calves all the time, and you're like, is she in my age group? Is she in my age group? And then with the pros, we have like a P, just like a general P on your calf. So you don't have to have your age on like out there for the world to see on your calf. So one small advantage of being in the pro field.
No one knows how old you are.
Yeah.
And how do you go about getting your pro card? Or I don't know if that's what it's called, pro card.
Yeah, that's one. Yeah, that's like the cool term. Pro card, technically elite license.
Okay.
But you have to finish in the top in a race that has $15,000 or more in the prize purse. You have to finish within. You have to be the first female or male, or in a race with $15,000 or more, you finish within 8% of the winner's time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's so technical.
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. There's like one other way, which is an age graded time. No, not age graded. I'm sorry. A gender graded time. So if you did a race with like all men and some women, doesn't matter. But if if you finish like up with the top men, then you'll get a lot of points worth for that performance, and then you can also qualify. So I ended up qualifying actually New York City Triathlon. I won the amateur race in 2017, I think.
Nice. That's sweet.
Yeah.
Are there
qualifying in my like hometown?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it'd probably feel good, to get that to get it there, get it, at home.
Yeah, exactly. And with like my coach, like at the turnaround of the bike and like in person, like that's awesome. So, it helps also that we swam in the Hudson.
Oh, which is
downstream.
I see, because I live on the Upper West Side, and I would always see that I guess you guys probably going, and there's right on the West Side Highway where you kind of dump in, and I'm always like, these people have serious balls to go in that water. That's disgusting.
It's not
as bad as I have in my head.
It's pretty gross. But like one advantage of being in the pro field is that we start first. I think the pro men go and the pro women go, and like I think we're in the water by 7, so we're done. And like usually that day's super hot, so like we're done like pretty early. But what I will say about the water is that I made a conscious effort to because when you get out, you sort of have this like film on your face, and they call it like the Hudson stash, or I think there's like other names, but like you have like dirt, like, yeah, it's like gravelly. So I made a point to just go like that to like get some of it off. And then it was on my hands. So
you're like,
so
I wonder why they can't think of a better solution than this. It's right here. I'll show you when we finish. It's disgusting. And right now, I went for a run today, actually. It reeks of fish. I don't know if you were around for this. It happened. I I think in March or April. I think it was the end of my pregnancy, like right around the time, because I was walking like a crazy lady, and there were so many dead fish. Literally, like it was just a sea of dead fish, and you were just seeing floating because something with the oxygen and the heat of the water or something, which I think is bullcrap because it's cold out. It's like 20 degrees out.
Yeah.
How could? But it's so cold out today, and you can still smell the fish. It reeks. And it's like, if it were like 40 or 50 degrees outside, how disgusting would that be?
Yeah, that's sketchy. Like, I know they sometimes release sewage into the Hudson if it's like overflowing or something. So yeah, I don't buy that. It was an oxygen thing. It was definitely like poison.
Yeah, horrible. And it's happened like, I think it happened at least twice in 2020. And then I just saw it again or smelled it again today. It's crazy. It's disgusting. So we know how you find your coach. When you do a race, how does it start? Like, walk me through what your day looks like.
Okay. I
Or
always
any like, rituals, kind of yeah.
Yeah, I love getting into the minutia because triathlon is so about details. Like you wouldn't believe. Like if I could write a checklist, there'd probably be like at least 50 things that I have to make sure are correct before I start a race. So I'm always there the night before because the day before the race there's a pro athlete meeting where we go over the course. We go over the drafting rules because you cannot draft in the type of triathlon that I do.
What does that mean?
So you can draft on the bike, so like riding close behind somebody.
Okay.
In ITU, which is the Olympic distance and shorter, and the Olympic distance is the same distance as the New York City Triathlon does, but usually only in ITU can you draft in an Olympic distance. And usually that's only the professionals can draft. It's very small percentage that can. But in half Ironman and full Ironman, you cannot draft ever. So you have to keep, I believe I should like know this. It's like been drilled into my head, but it's like 5 bike lengths or 16 feet between the rear of the bike in front of you and the front of your bicycle.
So how are you supposed to pass?
So you have 20 seconds to pass each rider. Sometimes it's 16 seconds. It depends on the race. But you have X amount of seconds to pass each rider. And when you do pass, you can't come in right behind and then like swoop around and slingshot. You have to get out of the draft zone, go up, and as soon as your wheel overtakes their wheel, they are obligated, the person being passed is obligated to drop back.
Wow.
But that doesn't always happen, especially when you have usually other men in the race. Like if you start to pass them, they'll sometimes like try to go faster, and then it becomes very difficult to pass. But usually the pro women have enough of a head start that the age group men who start behind them don't catch up.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay. So triathlete meeting. That's always really cool because my first race ever, Oceanside, California, in 2017, my first pro race, 2018. I went into the pro athlete meeting and there was Jan Frodeno, who was like multiple time Kona champ. And you're like, oh, I'm just gonna like sit in the same room as you. Like, that's so cool. And I think Lionel Sanders was there as well. He's one of like very hardworking, very eccentric person that I look up to.
Do you, so you've been like a pro now for a few years. Mm-hmm. And you mingle with these people, you chum with them, or you fangirl, so you're like, I'm still a little shy. How does it work?
That's such a good question. Like inside for some of these, I'm like fangirling, but outside I'm like, I belong here, right? Because like you don't, right? Like, and I do believe that. I'm like, I earn the right to be here.
Yeah.
I'm in a race with other people taking it as seriously as I do, and I'm at like the pinnacle of my sport, and it's so cool that I can compare myself to the best, right? Because like when I was in age group, it was always like, oh, I was second in my age group, or I was first in my age group, but in those races, I was like, oh, I was like, oh, I was second or third, and people like, oh, in your age group, and it's like, no, overall, like I want to know how right? Like,
yeah,
I want to know
very
how
different.
Yeah, and like always trying to get the best out of myself. That's gonna change once I'm old and slower, but
Until then, yeah. But what is the peak? You know, because I'm just about done with this book. I'm sure you've heard of it with, you know, Stacey Sims, Dr. Stacey Sims. This book, Roar.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. I need to read it like 5 more times. But I know that she talks about the statistics and the numbers of when women are at their peak. So what is that? I can't remember what she said. Or do you agree with it, or what? Since you're living it.
What it is. I feel like I like to listen to her on a podcast like once a month just to remind myself of how much knowledge she has. It depends on the distance.
Yes.
I hope it's like 35 to 40 because I'm not there yet. But
well, do you find yourself just getting better though?
So far, yes.
So yeah, whatever, that's all that matters.
Yeah, and like at this, because I've been doing triathlon since 2012 or 2013. Like I did, like, you know, that you get to a point where you hit some plateaus.
But when that happens, do you feel like you need to just shake it up, change your coach, change your nutrition?
Changing a coach, changing coaching philosophy is important. Changing a dynamic of like being with a group, exercising with other people. That's only something I've missed a lot of this year. But yeah, that's how I tackle that problem.
Okay. I realize you are just as bouncy as I am, so I'm going to rein us back in. We're going back to your routine.
Yeah. So at a triathlete meeting, usually 30 minutes to 45 minutes, you sign in, which is always feels really cool. You have like a big board and you provide your attestation that you will race. And then fast forward, I guess, race morning. These races start so early, which is great to go to the West Coast because you're like, you have that time change. That's super helpful. So I'm usually up around 4:30 to like just start to get some carbs in my system. I love a bagel with peanut butter and banana. That's my thing. Usually bring one from New York because New York bagels. I usually have that at least 2 hours before the start, and I have like a gel about when I'm like getting like within 10 minutes of the start. But when I show up, it's dark out, which is something you like always forget that it's going to be dark. So I show up, I have to have all of my equipment racked and ready. I like to have that done like 30 minutes before a race start because then I have the opportunity and this isn't consistent across every race, but I have the opportunity usually to warm up. And sometimes that's only for pros, sometimes it's for everybody. So I put on my wetsuit, which I want to leave like 10 minutes for because I don't want to like rip it and I have to be careful. So before putting on my wetsuit though, I have like my bike racked. I have like my shoes laid out for the bike. I do put on socks. That's sometimes like some people don't, some people do. You know, like left foot, right foot, because have them like ready in my bike shoes. I have the helmet on top of that so that I can't possibly forget to put on a helmet. Like
totally.
Helmet which has a built-in visor, so I don't have separate sunglasses. So I have my bike set up. My bike has to be in the right chain ring, so like the right gear. And that's based on what the start looks like. It's usually flat, like when you're rolling out of transition, but you never know. So you have to make sure the bike is in the right gear. Have all of my gels and my drink on my bike before I head out. And then my running, then I have my running shoes, my running sunglasses, and another gel ready to grab for the run, and a bib number. So I set up my transition, put on my wetsuit, head over to the start, and then usually I like to warm up at least 10 minutes, but time goes into a black hole between the time you leave transition and you go to like the water, and it's usually like 5 minutes. But you do what you can, and you warm up, and that's when the nerves really start to happen, because you're surrounded by the other pro women, and sometimes they're like, again, people that you really look up to, and you're racing them though. You're in the same field, and on any given day you can beat them. So it's a long race, 4.5 hours usually.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's the time frame for that, for I guess what you're really striving for like short times, and then what would be like an extended time, because it's always, whether you're doing a full or a half, it's the same distance. But if it's, whether it's let's say it's a full, but say it's super hilly, or those don't exist.
So I only have done half Ironmans.
Okay, so we'll talk about halves. So say it's like really hilly, right? So if it's really hilly or only up or whatever, obviously it will be much longer.
Yeah. So they do have hilly ones. I love those because my physique is smaller, so I'm a better climber on the bike. And one of my favorite races, which didn't happen the last 2 years because there's like some financial issues with it, or like they're just having trouble keeping it afloat, but it's Wildflower, and it's in California, in like the elbow of California. And that's super hilly. And that one took me 5 hours and less than 5:10, but over 5 hours.
Okay.
And then compare that to the same year, I raced Boulder half Ironman, and it was, just by being at altitude, that's another factor, I did 4 hours and 30 minutes.
Wow, so big.
That's a 10%, half hour out of 5 hour swing. 10% swing, I think.
That's all. 30 minutes is a lot.
Yeah. It's like the amount of time, like I could be like eating and napping in like 30 minutes after.
Yeah, totally. So what's like a record time?
Sub 4 hours women do go.
Women do go?
Yeah, and a full Ironman, I think the record is in the 7:30. I think it's 7:36.
And this is all for women.
That's for women. So you're talking about back-to-back 3:48s, which is like, that's so fast.
Yeah, that's it's insane. What keeps you driven if you have a job and you're stable and you like, obviously you have a passion for it, but it's exhausting. It's exhausting on your body to train. If you're doing 2-a-days, because you're training 5-6 days a week, or you have an active recovery day.
About once every 3 weeks, I have a day completely off. And on the weeks where I don't have completely off, I'll have a day where I just swim. So it's completely non-impact. But you're looking at around 14 to 16 hours a week. And I don't count my strength training in that, and I probably should, but yeah.
So what keeps you driven?
Yeah. The pursuit of being able to just get better drives me every day. Mm-hmm. It's the feeling, and I feel like everybody, like all athletes say that, but like having hit your potential and having the peace of mind to know that like you've hit your potential at some point. And growing up, I was always very driven. So whether it was my grades or playing flute in band. I was first chair. Being in all the honors classes.
Yeah.
Being Swimming, I was actually very mediocre. I don't know. But running, that's probably why I stopped swimming in high school. But and picked up all running full time instead. But with running, always been very driven, and it's like completely internal. My parents were so hands off, very supportive, but like never never was pressured me to do anything. They would have been happy if
you just got good grades. You didn't need to be in honors classes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Where that comes from.
Yeah, I think, and I grew up seeing my parents. My mom works; she still works as a waitress. My dad works in food service as well, ordering food and making it. And he always had a part-time job as well, in addition to his full-time. So I think seeing that, and like not having grown up with a lot, like we had financial issues.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw that drive. My mom would always pick up extra shifts. And I saw that if like you work hard enough, then like you can make ends meet. And I know that's like, it's not just working hard. There's obviously the last year's been all about your own privilege.
Mm-hmm.
So I completely recognize that. I recognize that I went to a really premier, like prestigious university. But I always just like worked so hard in everything I did. I was a first generation college student. My parents were, they were like, if you want to be a waitress, that's great. Like they
support whatever you choose.
Exactly. Yeah. Every job has value. But that's always been a driving force for me, where like, no, like if I work hard, then I know I've done my best and I've done everything I can. So that's something, and I get emotional about it because my parents still work really hard. Like they're on their feet. I do a desk job, and I'm so grateful for my steady job. Did I mention I work at Citibank?
Yep.
So I have a bank job, like, and then like my parents are on their feet, and like they would never accept a dime from me, but I don't.
It's tough, right? To see your parents who are at their age older, and you see them getting old, and you're just like, oh, it's hard. It's so hard to see. I know what you're talking about. I grew up in a very similar situation, so it's very it's tough. Like it's just hard, and that's what America's made of. And it sounds crazy because I'm from the Midwest, so those flyover states, that's what America is. It's not New York City. This is totally fugazi. Like this is not real. This is not real life. Real life is what's going on where you grew up, and where I was just telling someone this, that where I grew up, literally people would ride their dirt bikes and their tractors to school. Like middle of nowhere, podunk. Like, I get it.
Yeah, and I grew up in Pennsylvania, not too like on the northeastern corner. Very very working class. We had the day off for deer hunting season, day off of school.
Yeah.
And
opening day.
Yeah. And like I hate that term, like flyover state, like that. I hate when people refer to it like that, because it's like, no, those are people too. And we see it like riding bikes out here in New Hampshire. It's very live free or die once you get away from the coastline. And in some ways it's like, oh man, like you see like their allegiance to certain political parties, and you're like, wow, like we're out here. But it's like, but it's so like, it's saddening to see that. But you're like, no, we have to be reminded that like, the coastal elite is not like, that's not the world, right?
It's not reality.
It's exactly. And that's been one really eye-opening thing about moving a bit away from New York. That's been, I think it's inherently good. It's a reminder that that there are a lot of folks out there who feel differently, and their life has been brought up where were brought up in the woods or on the farm, and that's what they know. So to bring that back to triathlon, it's like when I go, like, these are mostly in major cities, but like one of my favorite places was like out in Traverse City, Michigan, and like
I grew up right near there.
Oh wow, cool. And I stayed, like, the thing is you get to stay with host families, and this is like I'm reaching a little bit now because I was not out in like the boonies at all. Like I was like with like a nice Traverse City is beautiful, but you stay with people who are from the area. So that like you have like a host family, and like that's cool because you're integrated in that sense.
It's very nice. It's I mean, Traverse City's turned into like a tourist town because that's where everyone knows it. The casino's there, like it's nice, it's beautiful. But you know, like surrounding towns are little and tiny, but you know, I just think of it, especially now that I have a kid. I think like I don't know if I'd want to raise her here. Like
I was just gonna ask you that. Like,
yeah, I don't know if I want to. My husband and I talk about it because he's from Israel, and he grew up very humble, like in a very humbled, like middle lower class, I think, and we're both like we do good, like we're fine, we're happy, and you know, I talk with my girlfriends here, and they're like, oh, well, send your kid to private school or do this or that, and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I think that it's healthy to experience things and to live and to be in the country and not have your cell phone and not, see what the latest trends are and see what whoever is doing and try to fake that, copy them and get their fake this and fake that. And I don't know, I think that's why I respect athletes. That's why I really enjoy the fitness world, because it's not something that you can just poof, inherit or buy or fake. Like, it's something that you have to consistently, deliberately make a lifestyle of and persistently work at, right? Like, you don't just wake up and you're like, yes, genetics does play a part, and yes, you can, but that's not what it is. It's day in, day out grind. So I think that when we were initially talking, I was like, I really want to talk to her and pick and hear what, like, because I like these, as like the human, that natural, that gritty, raw part that comes from that perseverance, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's like the ability, like it's kind of like to make it's an equitable thing where like you can't outbuy your way of, like, you can't outbuy pull-ups. Like,
right. Exactly.
I can't buy a little bit. There's the caveat of like, this bicycle is like, these bikes are not cheap. And that's sort of like, that just tugs on my heartstrings a bit because there is a lot of equipment with the bike.
Right.
It's probably why I love the run so much, is because like,
just
you can't, it's just like your legs and your lungs, and you earned, it feels like you've earned every ounce of that.
Mm-hmm. Totally. So speaking of the run, and I want to break down each one. So what is your, like, general swim time, bike time, run time when you do your halves?
Yeah. So swimming is, I always hover right around 30 minutes. Been working on my sim the last year and a half though, so I hope that's more like in the 28s. The bike is right around 2.5 hours, usually, hopefully quicker for me. And then the run is, to put it cleanly, 1.5 hours, although I do pride myself running like an hour 25 to hour 26.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's great. And what do you, so you have your bagel and your peanut butter and banana before. Obviously, I'm from the Midwest. I said bagel. And and I also say dad and couch and pop. What else are you eating? What else are you do your gels, your goos? What
Yeah.
else?
Yeah, I am like a goo monster. Like whenever I'm on the bike, like as many as I can handle. Usually one every 20 minutes. And so if I'm on the bike for 230, 220 to 230, you're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 or 8 gels. Like I should brush my teeth on the bike because that's so much sugar. um, and washing that down with I start with a noon endurance, and then after a bit I have water.
Just water.
And then yeah, after my first bottle is noon endurance, and then water, and then grab. And I usually have to do one bottle exchange during the race, during the bike, so I have to grab a water from the assistants on the side.
Nice. Did you ever poop yourself?
No, but I've definitely, I think everybody pees.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that it happens like for me, always like in transition, which is like because you've stopped, because like you're either going from the swim to bike or the bike to run. And in order to like put your shoes on, you're stationary for 20 seconds. And then just that moment of like relaxation. I mean, I'm not relaxed in the moment, but that moment of like, you haven't been like sitting on a saddle, everything just like releases and you're just like, it's happening. But to go back and then on the run with the gels, and then on the run, I usually have around 4. So like one every 3 or 4 miles.
Are you sponsored by this gel goo company? You should be, Lord.
No, I need that, but you know what? But like on that note, you never like I can only carry so many gels. Like I
was going to ask, what do you carry them in? Just a little.
On my bike, there's a little like storage box in the top.
Oh yeah,
see that like little hump. And then I usually swim with one so that I have it like tucked in my jersey pocket, and then in transition I grab another and after the swim, and I grab 1 or 2 after the bike. And then whatever the race has, you have to be good with it and your stomach has to be okay with it. So yeah. And then funny enough, I always find that like, and I never forget, like I read this from a coach, and it said that like when you find like your mind always craps out before your body. And if you're not fueling enough, usually, or if you start to feel like kind of negative and you start to have those negative thoughts, double check if you haven't had a gel in a while, that's probably, that could actually cure some of your like negative thoughts. It's like, cause you're starting to run a little low. So, and I always feel
it makes sense though.
Yeah. I never had a gel I regretted. So.
Well, I guess there's your answer for that. When you I just lost my train of thought, but it was about the gels and the why did I lose my train of thought? I swear to you, it's pregnancy brain. Like postpartum, I'm all sorts of wonky, and it's every woman that I know. So aside from the gels and the goos, what else do you eat? Like, what's your normal nutrition kind of diet look like? Do you just eat, you seafood, you eat it, that kind of diet, or you?
Yeah, so growing up, my mom she was very into like home cooking. So it was like, pork chops and dumplings and meatloaf and stuffed peppers and like,
hearty stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So on the nights that she didn't work, that's what we had. And then on the nights she did work at the restaurant, then my dad usually cooked like grilled cheese and because he was so sick of cooking during the day. So we had like the encore chicken parm, like, but my parents were not into fitness. They supported all my fitness, but there was never like a diet culture at all. Like my mom wasn't one of those moms who like was trying to lose weight. And she was like regular mom weight, a healthy weight.
Mom weight.
Like whatever. And always full fat milk.
Yeah.
My parents liked Cremora Cremora and sugar in their coffee, like margarine. So everything was just like, yeah, it's just I didn't think about it. Always ice cream in the house, and we had no limitations. So
Same.
if we wanted ice cream, like we just go get it.
I remember, it's so funny you say that, because I remember going to like friend's house, or even now, like people that I know who have kids, and the kids have to ask. And I remember I'm like, I never asked. Is that weird? Like it was never, I can't even imagine fathoming, Mom, can I have a popsicle? Like my brother and I would literally eat packs of ice cream. Like we would go through packs of popsicles. We had the ones that were 2 and there were 2 sticks on it, and we break it in half. They had like the blueberry, the banana, and the root beer, or like the sandwiches. We would go through jugs of ice cream, and I feel maybe it was a different time.
Yeah, I don't know. We had no limitations with TV too. Like I would play video games till I didn't want to play them anymore. And I think that intuitive eating is so important. And and it's funny. Like I read in National Eating Disorders Awareness Month just happened. And I read like so many women struggle with this, and men too. And I read and I almost feel guilt that I can't connect with that. Like I never, but then I'm so grateful because I didn't have to deal with that. But it feels like I have nothing to input on the topic other than my one experience sample size of 1 is I didn't grow up with limitations, and I grew up with home cooking, and I'm very happy. I still do that. Like I love butter. I love Kerrygold. If I can get a Kerrygold sponsorship, I love like regular milk and like pasta all the time. Like
it's weird, right? It's so funny that, because I didn't really plan on talking about this, but I think that it's so valid because, you see on social media all these girls, and I'm sure guys, I don't know, I'm sure. And athletes, wrestlers, fighters, boxers, whatever, there's always a weight class. So there's always someone's trying to make weight or cut weight or this or that. And I get that. And I could kind of see how it turns into a disorder. But and then I'm like, well, maybe it's a seasonal thing. Okay, that's one thing. But going back to the social media thing, I think that I see it a lot of females who, they talk about their eating disorder, and I agree. I'm like, I never had, and I'm not saying it like, I'm not bragging, but it's something that's really difficult to relate to, because growing up in a place where my parents weren't normally home, my parents were divorced when I was like 3 or 4. So just being, with my siblings or by myself or whatever, and just having whatever you want at your disposal, I think that there is something to it where and I never even thought about this till now, where you just learn that intuitive eating. Like, I know when I'm getting full. I know when I'm actually hungry. Yeah. And my parents have never portion controlled me. They've never, like, I already said this. It's never been, can I have, like, it's never been an ask. It's the kitchen. You live here. This is your kitchen. Eat what you want kind of mentality. So I think that it's a really interesting time that we live in, because, I read about it a lot also with the eating disorder, and I don't really know I never know how to respond, because I'm like,
yeah, all you know is your own experience, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, yeah, again, like I feel like I can't give advice other than like I'm really, really grateful that I grew up with that intuitive. Like I didn't know I was learning it, but
yeah, only when and I think that now having a kid, I'm like, it kind of makes you question. Well, and this also goes to the body image thing that we kind of briefly touched on before, which is like, so when I was and I explained this to you, but I'll say it again because now we're actually recording, is at one point when I was training, my husband said, babe, like, you're getting a little too buff. Like, you're a little too manly looking, or, you know, whatever you want to say. And my response was, well, I'm comfortable. I like the way I look. I don't really care. But I understood what he was saying, and I understand. And so my actual response was, one, I don't care, but also, well, if I want you to be more ripped, or if I want you to be fat, or if I want you to be, are you going to do that because I want you? And his response was, well, no. And I was like, okay, so why would I be what you want me to be? Like, I'm comfortable enough. Why, right, exactly.
The double standard.
And so it's an interesting thing because we would go back and forth on it. And then I ended up switching where I trained anyhow. So it just kind of died out. Because, you know, when you train with certain people, as you said, the tide rises, everyone rises with the tide. And that's basically what was happening. Is I was training with these, you know, this group of girls, and you always go heavy, or you always do this or that. And so you just do it because that's what they do. And, you know, it was a great group, but I kind of ended up just going a different direction. So it was whatever, it was fine. But it was just interesting how, if I didn't have the strong foundation that I have of, I'm comfortable, I don't really care, it would make me question it. Because he's someone, obviously, that I care about. It's my husband. But I think that a lot of times, and I said this to him just, I think, yesterday, like, we have a daughter. You keep your weight, you know, body thoughts to yourself. Because I'm not going to allow, you know, my daughter to have any sort of image situation. Like, it's just, like, growing up, it wasn't something we ever talked about. My mom would walk around in a sports bra. You know, she took care of herself, healthy, fit, whatever. But it wasn't like a sexual thing. It was just, I'm comfortable in my skin. I'll wear what I want, and that's it. So I feel like when you have that as like a role model, maybe it makes it easier to just not even think about it, right? Like when your parents or people around you are constantly, well, did you eat, or didn't you eat, or you didn't eat enough, or you ate too much, or constantly poking and prodding about those things, it makes you too conscious.
Yeah, or talking about it within themselves of you absorb so much of that in your daughter. Like, if she hears that, like, there's just so much that children absorb that they then they repeat it later. I hear like my friends who have children all the time. They're like, I don't know where they learned that. Like, they learned that somewhere, and it wasn't me. Or I said that one time. I used that word one time, and now they go repeating it. But I think that having been exposed to sports early was something that really helped. And because to me, like, my body was a vehicle of doing the things I wanted to do. Right. Like, starting with t-ball, and then little league, and then swimming in the summer. And it was like, and even to this day, there's not like a physique I want. There is the performance that I want, and the physique follows as a result. And if that means a six-pack, great. There are women faster than me who don't have a six-pack because that's just not the way that their body carries muscle or whatever. You know, and it can mean like a bajillion different like aesthetic things. But for me, it was always like the goal is performance, and anything that happens is a happy downstream impact.
Absolutely. I think that that's something that's finally catching on, right? Like this strong is beautiful movement, or embracing your body movement, or whatever it is, that's, you know, happening in the last, I don't know, a couple of years or so, where it's like you find what you enjoy and the aesthetic will come with it.
Yeah. And funny, you talk about stuff you enjoy. So like when I first wanted to do triathlon, because I wanted to diversify, my running was like very much plateaued, and like I wasn't having fun with it. I was still doing it. But yeah, I was actually still PRing a little bit. Like I would PR, like I had post-collegiate like PRs that were faster than my collegiate ones. So, but I was like, this is okay. Like, I don't know. And I just like needed to shake things up. And my boyfriend at the time, who I was living with, was like, oh, like he was like an elite runner. He like qualified for trials or whatever in the marathon. And he was like, oh, like, you're going to get a triathlete body. And I was like,
what is that?
Okay, first of all, what is that? I'm so curious. And second of all, like, fuck you. Like, what do you mean? Like, I
thought you loved me for my great personality.
Yeah, right? Like, what is that why you're with me? It was so like shocking, and I was like, I can't believe like you think that way, because like, yeah. So that was probably a red flag. And one of the things that one reason like I did pick up triathlon is like I wanted to do something just for me, and I was in the process of moving out because I had lived with him, and things were falling apart, and I picked up triathlon as like just something I wanted to always do, and I finally did it for me. So
good.
Yeah. But it like you said, like you knew like in your heart that you're like, I'm okay with this. I'm okay with the way I look, and therefore like why would it possibly bother you? And that's probably more on them than it is on you.
100%. I think that it's a well, and the more that as a female you get comfortable with, and this was before I had a kid, right? So what I'm realizing, even after, you have a kid, I gained like 25 pounds, which is on the small side. Women, I think my sister gained like 70 pounds or something. Like, women gain a whole variance of different weights when they get pregnant. And then after, it's like, there's no bounce back. It's truly like a bounce forward of who knows what direction, or a ricochet for that matter. Like, you don't know what's going to happen with your body, or if it's ever going to be even remotely similar, or who knows what. But it's one of those things where it's like, because we as women go through that, or maybe you don't, it doesn't really matter, but because that's something that's a potential to go through, I think that it's super important for you to be comfortable in your skin before you ever get there, because like I know girls who they're not comfortable in their skin, and they're jealous, and they have these insecurities, whatever, and they say like, well, if we just get married, then I'll be happy. If we just have a kid, I'll be happy. And I'm like, I'm there, and I'm very comfortable. Let me tell you that when you get married, there's a bunch of other problems that arise. When you have a kid, and this is so simple and cliche, but it starts with you. Like, it has to be within you, and only when you're in your happy place and you make you happy, no one else makes you happy, you do, that's when you're good.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And like you can set those barriers, keep like, when I do this, when I do that, and it's like, you'll just be happy now.
Yeah, it's really if only it were that simple for people.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, like you mentioned, like that's like something in the back of my mind, and not something I've ever talked about publicly, but like when I do have a child, which I want to do, and I'm 33, so like I'm not married yet, but like I don't know how my body's going to bounce back. Or I shouldn't say bounce back. I'm sorry. Terrible misnomer.
You don't have to
how am I
apologize to me.
Well, like it's like, oh, you have a new body, like, and you embrace it, and it does more amazing things than it did before, and it just did this amazing thing of making a human. So, but I don't know how like the performance will be affected, and it could be for the better. It could be,
yeah,
or it might not be. So, I've definitely, that does weigh on my mind, and I've sort of see like these next couple of years as another reason to get a new coach is like, it's got to happen now. Like with women only have they have, keeping in mind, like if they do want to have kids, and there might be consequences.
Totally.
Or just time limitations. Like I can barely take care of myself. Like what my peers, they have kids running around. Like I could barely get my own stuff done. Like I could barely keep my plants alive. Like I don't know how you do it. So
you'd figure it out. I think that I am the least. I'm the least maternal person I know. Like, and I don't know where it came from. My husband was like, "You're such a good mom," and I'm like, "I know, I'm shocked. Like, I had no idea." because it's truly, this is part of the special thing of being a female. Like, it's just innate. Like, it will just be there. It will, I'm sure.
Well, something for me to look forward to.
Definitely. It's a wild, wild ride, but it's totally worth it. It's super cool. My little one is 10 and a half, just under 10 and a half months. And she is walking like a crazy lady, like trying to run. It's crazy because she's an early walker. And I always joke, I'm like, well, because I was working out and, weight training and doing all sorts of crazy stuff when I was pregnant. And I say that she had to build a lot of strength when she was in there because she was like holding on to make sure she wasn't bouncing around. It's like my little joke. But yeah, no, it's wild. I swear, it's my greatest adventure. And I've done some kind of cool stuff.
Yeah, I'm not equipped to talk about the topic, but one athlete I look up to is Laura King, who she actually lives in Vermont. She's also amazing cyclist, and she had a baby a year and a half ago or so, and she talks about how like she's very outspoken about like the whole like, oh, when I get my old body back, and she's like, no, like you have a new body now and it's awesome. And like everyone was warning her about like, oh, just wait, you'll never sleep again. And she's like, how about all the good things that come with having a child? And and as I eventually get ready for that like next stage, like I love her approach on that, because it's like, yeah, just like everyone's like giving her the negative, and she's like, now I have this like other human, I can't even like picture what life was like before her, and it feels like we have something extra.
Totally. So, it's mindset. It's truly and my husband and I talk about it because we both have siblings and we're both the youngest, so we can see, we're very close with them, so we really see how it goes. And it's like, you can either see your kid as work and it's exhausting and it's a little hellion, or you can see your kid as an extension of you and it's great fun and easy and enjoyable. And those are kind of, in layman's terms, like the easiest ways to look at it. Either your kid is this for you or your kid is this for you. And it, as with everything, is perspective.
Yeah. And whether it's like kid or training or...
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you look at it as like this dreadful thing, it's going to be dreadful. And
for a little while, like I was just talking with a girlfriend about this. The first, everyone says at the end, and it's really backwards in the U.S. And now that I've done like a lot of podcasts and I've spoken with midwives and see what people do abroad and in Europe and whatever, it's like they really have it figured out. But here we don't. It's like during your pregnancy, they look at you as though you're disabled and you're not capable of doing anything. And then as soon as you have your baby, they expect the bounce back, or whatever you want to call it. And it's like, I literally, the week I went overdue and I was walking 6 miles, 8 miles, 9 miles a day in in the extra week and a half when I was supposed to have her, I was like just trying to induce the labor. And after, once you have the kid, it's like your body is wrecked. Like, and you've put your body through some pretty tremendous training and, adventures and races and things that you've done, but it's like your body's ripped in half, literally. That's just what it is. And it's crazy because there's this expectation that, okay, well, go back to work and do this and do that and all these things. And it's like, okay, when I was fine, you were treating me as a disabled, but now that I'm not fine, you want me to be fine. It's very interesting. You'll see when you get there.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I'll still have like my nice like maternity leave policy that like the cities has a good one. So
for your sake, I hope so too. I think that it's it's obviously it's all worth it. You hear this, I'm sure, many, many times, but it is, it's an adjustment, but what else could you expect when you bring a human into the world? Like when you bring a puppy home, it's an adjustment period, and you didn't push that puppy out of your vagina. So like you can only imagine. What else do you have to share? I think that we might have to do a second episode, a part 2, on your food and getting the right saddle fit and a bunch of other things.
Speaking of vaginas, like that thing, that little like, I don't know, it's like less than a foot long and it's like 3 inches wide, and you spend several hours on it. Like it's got to work.
Well, I've heard there's a lot of, I don't know if it's numbness, but there is a lot of sexual issues that end up happening with cyclists, and I'm assuming also at triathletes.
Yeah, with a poor fit, you can have, if you have like too much pressure on right on your clit, then it's going to be very numb and unpleasant after a ride or even during a ride. Which is why you have to have like the right, and you can't tell, but like my saddle's like split, like it's solid where I sit, and then it splits to allow like a gaping channel for your clit, so that's not vibrating, because like, just like the road, like there's like vibrations in addition to pressure, so it's like perfect storm if like things do not fit well. But I didn't even realize we've been talking for a while. Like I just looked at the time. It's crazy.
It's so easy to just poof, time gone.
Yeah. Well, thanks for staying up late for me.
Of course. Thank you for making time for this. I learned so much, and whenever you're back in the city, let me know. We'll have to meet up and.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, thanks again.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Arielle.
Absolutely.